So is there a shotgun option, or is there a button on it that says shotgun?
No,
Like,
I don't think so.
But okay, so shotgun will be like direct. So like, let me see my microphone. Hang on. So shotgun would be like, I'll get this thing attached.
Okay, so for the viewers, I listened to your comments and I said it. Also, desktop bodybuilding really helped me out. So I said it the right way, and I'm going to talk to it like this. Now, if I'm doing something wrong, just let me know again. I'm technologically.
So a shotgun, you would talk like this. You know, if you can get it more towards like this, towards the top, you get a better sound out of it. It'd be like a clearer quality.
Interesting.
And to the side, it picks up. It picks up kind of what's around, but it's not as direct as if you had it like right in.
Well, let me check something actually. Oh yeah, I have to move to this microphone. Okay. Okay. So do you hear me still?
Yep.
You still hear me good?
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't hear you now. 1 second. Oh, that's why. I hear you again. Okay, everything's set up.
Got it.
Okay, so Gary, I have to really apologize. I'm almost Germanic with my time schedule, and I have never ever been this late to a Zoom call.
No worries, man. It's not a big deal.
You're really kind.
I just couldn't run too late on it. I adjusted everything here, and I have to be at the lodge later on, so I couldn't really, shift it again.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about that also, but I really appreciate you coming on. And basically, what happened was that I wasn't sure, because usually I do these with Nick Trigili, but Nick is focusing now on his HRT clinic, which has just started, called Recharge. So he will no longer be on my channel for a while.
Okay.
Well, I didn't know if, so I was trying to see if you would come later or whatever. That's why I was trying to reschedule with you. But,
okay. But, so we started an HRT clinic? I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. It's called Recharge Alternative Medicine. It's a franchise that he started with a former client of his and mine, actually. And basically, they'll be prescribing all kinds of exotic drugs like the Anabol and Anadrol. And,
can they do that?
Well, apparently not, but apparently it's like sort of like the Wild West, where they can sort of get away with everything for right now and just hope that, I mean, this is not from them. I'm just from what I hear from other people that own HRT clinics. Like, for example, Ryan Russo, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a young guy on YouTube. He has an HRT clinic that they prescribe everything, Anadrol.
Right. Yeah. There's one in Vegas that like a former like a follower of mine, him and his girl were together, they got separated or whatever. And she had hit me up. She said, hey, I really like to talk to you about like Titan Medical, because they have me on Winstrol and this and that. And I was like, what? I'm like, just for a woman like TRT, instead of having like estrogen or testosterone, they had on like a host of things. It was like Xandrolone, it was stenozolol. And she was like, has your wife ever been on that stuff? I'm like, what? I'm like, no. I'm like, how can they prescribe that? And she's like, I don't know, they prescribe it for me. And I was like, her voice had dropped. She was getting hairs growing on her face. She goes, this is normal. I said, for what you're taking, yeah, but I don't know if that's, I mean, it's Vegas. So a lot of stuff happens in Vegas that doesn't happen in other places. But first time I heard it, she was like, I'm on Deca, stenozolol, Dianabol. I'm like, holy shit.
Wow.
I'm like, plethora. There's everything you needed to be like a top-notch bodybuilder. They had this girl on, and she eventually switched over to Titan. But they prescribed anything. It didn't matter what you wanted.
Yeah, basically, it seems like they're able to do that for a period of time, and then sometimes the government makes an example of one of the companies, so they close them down. But it's sort of the Wild West, especially during COVID, apparently, because there's a lot of telemedicine right now, so it's not being looked at very carefully. How's your relationship with Titan? Are you an affiliate there?
So my relationship with them is kind of interesting. So I wound up meeting them through Chris Cavallini from Nutrition Solutions. So Chris and I are close. I've been with him for 5 years or 6 years this year. And he came to the Arnold one time, and John and Sharice were with him. So he brought them over, and I had been asking questions about the injectable vitamins, because I didn't really know much about, they had injectable vitamin C and glutathione. I was asking questions. So he just brought them over to talk to me. And we just started shooting the shit, and everything kind of hit off. And they were like, yeah, if you want to, try some of our stuff out, just hit us up. So I did. And I was like, look, I do TRT over at this place. I'd rather move to you guys too. And they were just really cool people, but they understood, because John himself used to do stuff. And when he got messed up and went to the doctor wouldn't help him. He was like, you're on your own. So he was like, this is bullshit. So he started his own clinic, and they helped me a great deal, but it was really made me really, really indebted to them was they helped my wife. She'd been going to all these different doctors. They've been running all this blood work. She'd been to an endocrinologist. They couldn't find what was wrong with her. And at this point, she thought maybe she had like cancer or something because she felt so awful that she thought she felt like she was dying, like literally felt like she was dying. So finally, they ran a special panel. I guess it was 14. I don't know what it was that they ran. They found that her DHEA was non-existent and her testosterone was non-existent. So just those two things out of balance was like really messing her up. So they started supplementing her with the little troches, the little candies, and she would take one of the candies. That was too much. So eventually, got her on like this little cream. She just takes like a dab of cream, rubs it on her leg, and that brings her testosterone where it needs. And they were like, "Look, we're not even going to sell you DHEA. You can go buy it at the store. So just go get the cheapest version you can, take it, and we'll do is in 4 weeks we'll take blood work." So they did. They kept doing blood work until they found it, and she was perfect afterwards. She's been perfect ever since. So like where everybody else fell short and just wouldn't go that extra mile to try to find out what was wrong, they did. And they do that with everybody I send to them. They'll literally walk in and call them or whatever and be like, Jerry sent me and this is my problem. And they're like, all right. And they start digging, and they find it. They figure out what's wrong.
I have some idea. So I have a few comments. First of all, for the audience to know, DHEA supplementation in women is extremely effective, much more than in men. There's a lot of studies on this. Changes their like depressive symptoms, things like that. It's really quite effective. The second thing is IV vitamins. Some people think it's like a pseudoscience or alternative medicine. It's not. Like vitamin C is not well absorbed when you take it by a pill form. I want to take IV glutathione and vitamin C, not IM, because like glutathione especially, it's so potent of a free radical scavenger that it's potentially it could damage the tissue you injected in, but slightly. I mean, it's probably not that serious. Yeah. But I wish I had a clinic near me that would do the IV so I could go once a week. And
where are you now? Where do you live?
I live in Southern California in Irvine.
Really doesn't have them. There was one in Texas that I went to. It was at an expo. Oh. And when I rolled up there, they were like, what do you want in the bag? I was like, they had different options. And I told them, I said, well, I take this, this, and this. And they were like, okay, we can put the glutathione. So when they did the IV infusion, different ball game. So yes. I was like energetic. I mean, and not stimulated, but I felt good. And I mean, really good. Like I was young and healthy for about 3 days afterwards. So I could see if someone was taking those things like twice a week, it was a whole different experience taking an IV.
Basically, it'll get rid of all that oxidative stress that we're building up.
It was like you felt it going in, and you actually could taste the B vitamins in your mouth.
Incredible.
Like when it started to go through. So I don't know you probably never injected anything IV.
No.
Like if you ketamine or so I injected Jack Daniels IV one time.
I heard that. Yeah. But you injected ketamine IV?
Oh yeah, ketamine. Hell yeah. Ketamine was we stopped we first used to buy these little vials that look like steroid vials. And we would take them, rip the tops off, dump it in a bowl, put it in the microwave for like 60 seconds, and it would turn into powder.
Yeah.
So we had a completely uncut ketamine, and we were filling these little bottles, these little jars, they call them. We'd take them to the clubs. We'd sell them off over there. And what happened was we were putting people in major K-holes because we didn't know you were supposed to cut it. So we were giving them like pure ketamine. So they're all like fucked up against the wall, like not moving. And we're like, shit. So I called the guy I got it from, and I was like, hey, what's going on? He's like, you didn't cut it? He's like, dude, you need to cut it with a nozzle. He's like, you're going to put people in like fucking comas. So we were getting those vials for a while. And now if you do enough K, eventually it's like you don't have the same effect. So I had friends that were taking Nubane, and they would put a little bit of K in the Nubane and whack that like that. And so I was like, all right, obviously we're done.
That's actually quite smart. You know what happens when you take an NMDA receptor blocker like ketamine and an opiate? You lower your tolerance for the opiate. Like methadone, one of the two isomer forms of methadone actually blocks NMDA receptors. And in fact, ketamine's main effect is to block those NMDA receptors, which is why it's hard to remember things when you're on ketamine and stuff like that. Your brain sort of freezes, and that's why they call it a disassociative kind of drug. Yeah. But what many people don't know is that ketamine is also an agonist of the mu-opioid receptor. People don't know that. And so now they're prescribing that S-ketamine nasally for depression. And I think that the main effect is actually that mu-opioid downstream. There's a dopamine effect. Yeah. And they just don't realize it.
When I was trying to get off opiates, so the Nubane led to Oxycontin, which led to heroin. And when we tried to detox off of heroin, what we did was we had the guy in Mexico ship us a big box of ketamine. And I mean like 50 vials of ketamine. And we just kept shooting it every day, all day long. And the withdrawals would have a tendency to go away.
Wow.
Right. Because we figured if you go through the withdrawal period and you come out on the other side, then once you're done with the withdrawals, you won't be sick anymore. So I'm like, if we could do the ketamine to mess ourselves up enough, we don't feel the withdrawals. But then when we were done with the ketamine, the withdrawals came right back, which means it was hitting the opiate receptor and it wasn't helping us detox.
Oh, that's
so now it makes sense. Yeah,
that's true. A good point. Hey, by the way, I'll mention another thing. I used to order nutrition solutions for about a year because of you. So because of I was a big fan of your channel.
Yeah,
for a year, they're actually very good meals. Very nice. Very
Chris is the man, dude. He's real top notch with the quality and stuff. But like, it's their rotating menu. I think most people like every week. It's a different food every week, and I think that helps a lot. More, I'd say not necessarily more the bodybuilders, the people that live the fitness lifestyles that don't like to eat the same stuff over and over again. Bodybuilders have a tendency to condition themselves to eat chicken, broccoli over and over and over. But yeah, that just helps people, I think, stay on the diet a lot better.
So I reposted a video you made yesterday, which I absolutely loved. As usual, deep wisdom from Jerry. But this topic was really interesting because you were talking about steroids, and it's a really good introduction for somebody that's never used them, really, because you go all over the place from how you learned about it, how you used steroids, how you realized that you thought it was sort of icing on the top, but really when you remove it, that stuff can't stay there. And the most important point that I noticed you mentioned was this, new phenomenon in the last 3 or 4 years since Rich Piana passed away. Before they were fake natties, and Blaha used to love calling them out. And I think you used to call them out also? Were you one of the first?
Absolutely. Yeah, I did. Absolutely.
You might have invented it.
I did for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that?
You might have invented the fake natty thing, calling them out.
I think that it was, I don't want to say invented it, but I was kind of doing it at the same time that Blaha was, not to give him any credit, but I mean, what true is true. I think we were doing it at the same time. And then, I just kind of, Matt August was kind of up and coming then, or he was kind of established. And people were always questioning whether or not he was on, and half natty, fake natty, YouTube natty, all these things like that. And I just got to the point where, I started to think back of guys that I knew that were natural. And, they're like 55, 60 years, like Tony Pearson. He looks exactly the same now, except with some saggier skin. But you would have swore he was probably loaded when he was younger. How the hell is he 70-something years old now and look the same? Because he wasn't on his, not that much, or he was natural, one or the other. And I really stepped back and was like, who gives a shit who's on and who's not? Who cares? Like, why do I give a shit? When I went off, everybody said I was still on. I'm like, this is exactly why I don't give a shit anymore. Like, I'm like 190 pounds and talking about how much and all. I'm like, I was 270 pounds. If you can't tell there's a difference between that physique and this, and you still think I'm taking shit, like now I realize these people don't know anything. They're just talking out of their asses. And they're, especially the ones that claim to know what people are taking. Like, you don't fucking
very specific. Like this.
Or he takes this and that. I'm like, dude, let's tell you what, even his training partner doesn't know how much he takes. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, very few people other than maybe his coach or his trainer, whoever the guy, the competitor is or woman, they know what they're taking. But other than that, either they all lie or they all think that they have a specific key. They found a perfect cycle or whatever, and they don't want to give it out. So, or they're searching and they're so close to finding that key, that perfect cycle, they don't want to give out the information to let other people onto it. So they just lie. So I think we should take a brief detour for a second to give an example of somebody that is a very high responder to steroids. And you would think he's taking more than he is. His name, I actually don't know his last name, but his name is George. He's a physique competitor. He's the guy who was claimed to have, the one who they claimed jumped Brandon Hendrickson at the Olympia. George Brown. Oh, I don't know.
Is his name George Brown? Let me check, because I have to. I'm involving you in my weekly updates. I have to talk about him a little bit because
did they get into a fist fight? Like they fought?
No, this is the problem. It was misreported, and I really need to fix. We misreported on my channel, and I spoke with George on the phone. God damn, it's really weird that I don't know his last name. I could search. Sorry about this, Jerry. But 1 second. Oh yeah, George Brown. So he's George Brown. He competes in physique. What happened, guys, I'm going to title this in the video so people can see it also, because we have to fix the misinformation that we promoted a little bit on the channel. So Brandon Hendrickson was at the Olympia, and apparently, so his coach, his name is Mandis. Have you ever heard of Mandis from Chicago?
I've heard the name. I don't know. Yeah. If I saw him, I would know him though. So the story was that Mandis, Brandon dropped Mandis just before the Olympia, and he owed him $700. And the story was, and I heard the story the day of the Olympia, like people were texting me saying, I saw it, eyewitness, they jumped him. Yeah. So what happened was supposedly that George, along with, jump means more than one person, right? So yeah. George, assumedly with more than one person, approached Brandon about the $700 and jumped him. Now, the problem is Nick Trigili and I reported this. The reason I let it go is because I got so many messages from people saying it happened.
And then I spoke, and then George, yeah, but I made a mistake. And this is why I'm apologizing to George Brown and to the audience for misinformation. So what happened is we also spoke to Brandon. So Brandon reported it like that. But the problem is that apparently, you know how the world has gotten what I call pussified a little bit. People exaggerate a lot of stuff. Yeah. So I spoke to George on the phone at length, and he described exactly what happened to me. And his story seems very coherent. So what he said was this. He walked by, first of all, he said it's not 700, it's 3,000 that was old, or supplements. And what was happening was he was walking by Brandon Hendrickson, and he just told him, and he says he was not sent by Mandis, which is what many people thought. Who knows? Maybe he was sent by Mandis. Maybe he was just loyal to Mandis, whatever. But the point is he walked by him, and he told him, hey, you give that man his money that you owe. And he walked by. He said 10 minutes later, he was outside of the building on the sidewalk. George Brown was walking straight forward, and Brandon Hendrickson with his girlfriend was walking the opposite direction toward him. Apparently, they bumped shoulders, and George pushed him with one hand. That was the end of it. So there's no jumping. He also told me, check the camera footage at the place. There's no way he got jumped. If he was jumped, he would have a bruise the next day. I was alone. There was actually two of them, the girlfriend and him. So he's really upset about the misinformation. So I just want to clarify this. So I'm going to try in the video, yeah.
You're really into spirituality, right?
Yeah.
In cosmic and all these different types of things, right? Now, I just had, when you're saying this, that some people are reporting one thing and other people are reporting another. I just had a conversation. I had a friend that passed away a couple of weeks ago.
Sorry.
And there are two different stories from the people that were around him. And one says that he's in the hospital for months, and the other people are saying he was totally fine and just died. Now, me and my other friend were like, we think people, and this is going to sound absolutely crazy, but we're moving into a new age, which is the age of Aquarius. And a lot of cosmic things are going on around. The planets are aligning, energy is shifting. And we honestly think that people are actually living in two different realities. They're actually seeing two different things. Now, whether or not that's actually happening, their perceptions are different, meaning that people vibrate on different scales and different levels. I think different vibrations are actually, they're recognizing something different. Like, so you and I grew up in different places. The way that we view the world is different. Although it's the same world, to each one of us, it's different. So I'm starting to wonder if these people are actually seeing, they're, I don't want to say brainwashed, but in their head, they want to see a fight. You know, they know what's going on. And then we get the one push. Now they've actually seen the fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
for me, I mean, this makes a lot of sense. Like, we live in, because you could even say it physically, like in terms of technology, echo chambers, our cultures are diverging within America. There's so many different cultures now. People think differently.
People are seeing things they don't think, you know, they're seeing their own reality. They're seeing what they want to see, if that makes any sense.
The conversation is diverging to spirituality, and that's one of the topics I wanted to ask you about. How did you develop your spirituality? We'll go back to TRT, fake natties, and all that, but how did you develop your spirituality in the last like 3 or 4 years?
It was my wife, to be totally honest with you. She had already been on that journey herself. And I had some friends around me throughout the years that were very spiritual, into meditating and stuff. And I just laughed it off. I just wanted to be big. I wanted to be huge. I wanted to go to the gym. Like, I wanted to be a meathead. You know, I didn't want anything in these, you know, anything spiritual or religious or anything like that. And then I think before we even really started dating, we had like a conversation one night. We're talking about things, and she was kind of surprised that I had understood a few of the things, and I was surprised that she was talking about it. So she was, you know, really kind of like facilitated. I don't say facilitated, but like the things that I would have a hard time talking to my friends about because they seemed crazy, she would listen. So now it gave me like an outlet for that stuff so that it could actually grow. And the thing was, the more that I started to grow with it, the more I noticed that people around me were growing with it, and they just weren't saying anything either. You know, there were people around me that were starting to vibrate higher, and people in my life were falling off, and new people were coming in. And as my vibration started to change, the people that came around me matched my vibration. Now we're in similar lifestyles, you know, morals, everything was kind of matching up. It was very strange. And that's when I realized, you know, like there's something more to this than, you know, these crazy people wearing the tinfoil hats, you know, that, you know, everybody thinks is nuts. And the more I looked into vibrations and how it worked, and everything has a vibration, and even water in our body, the more I started looking into it, I'm like, wait a minute, there is a spiritual aspect. That spiritual aspect is also connected to a physical aspect. Like, there's a connection, there's a link. And I think that over time, I just had more and more of an open mind about this stuff. And like the individual I was talking to you that, you know, we think that people are seeing different reality. He's very, very, very hippie. You know, he's very spiritual. He's like next level, like guru type stuff. And, you know, you knew it kind of looking at him, but the closer that we got, the more he opened up, and the more we would talk about this stuff. And the more I realized that there was a lot of people around me that were either becoming spiritual, like spiritually awakened, or they were religious and they were linking that to now a spiritual journey with religion together. And people don't talk about it because, you know, it's not popular on the Kim Kardashian show. It's not popular on the news. It's not popular in sitcoms. You know, they want religion. They want, I shouldn't say religion, but they want spirituality kind of squashed because it's so far out there. You know, they want to hear science, you know, and we all know that science can be manipulated. The spirituality, they don't have anything really to prove it or back it up. So for me, I just said, you know,
I have a book here I was about to show, but I don't know where it is exactly. Just for the audience to know, there's a book called The Spiritual Brain, and it's by a neuroscientist. And it's you might really like it, Jerry. Anyway, please continue. Yeah.
So what you're saying right there. So I was reading an article, and this is kind of what really started to set it off. They said that your thoughts come from your mind, but your mind is not your brain.
Ah, that's true. The mind is separate from the brain in psychology.
They said that the human thoughts do not come from the brain. They're not really sure where thoughts come from. And there were scientists that were saying this, and I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, how can scientists, like, they know, you know, not everything about the brain, but they know enough through psychology and the different, you know, parts of the brain, how they work and the electrical stimulus and stuff. They must know enough to know where a thought comes from, and they can't explain it.
No, they
can't.
Yeah, let me add some science to that and show how they don't know. Like, for example, the real psychology, like the traditional psychology of Freud and Jung and stuff like that, that's like sort of a really not into the brain itself. It's just watching people and having guesses. And, you know, Freud had his sort of ideas of the, you know, the Oedipus complex and these kind of things. And these were sort of wishy-washy stuff. Then came Herbert Simon, who was actually from my university, Carnegie Mellon, who introduced a kind of psychology called cognitive psychology. There's also social psychology and behavioral psychology, behavioral being like Pavlov's dog and stuff like that. Personally, I was doing research in behavioral psychology in grad school. But the point is, there was this cognitive psychology, which cognitive goes like, how does your brain think? Like, how does your brain read? And it's not at the neuron level. It's at the compartments of the brain. And it's not very well understood either. This is like infantile science. Like it maybe in 200-300 years, it will grow. Then the other side of it is the neuroscience. And that's what I'm into now. But the neuroscience is just talking about cell by cell. There's no way to figure out how a thought came out either. It's really basic. Like, guys, I always make videos on neuroscience, but they don't really understand how the brain works. I mean, it's just very, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I actually had a client who works at NIH. That's what she does. She does brain surgery. She does, you know, brain research and stuff. And we were talking one day, and she said, you know, we don't know anything about the brain. She goes, really don't. We know like maybe 1%. She goes, because we've had people that come in into NIH, and they're like completely brain dead.
Oh, she's at the National Institute of Health.
Yeah, she's at NIH. Wow. They'll have this much of their brain. When you look at the map on the thing and it's lit up, it's all black except for that much. And the whole brain remaps itself to that little piece that's alive, and they wake up and they're fine. Exactly. She goes, we have no explanation. We study the hell out of it, but we can't figure out. She goes, then somebody comes in with a head trauma, their whole brain is functioning properly except for that little piece, and they lose everything in their vegetable.
Yeah.
Like, how the hell can the brain remap to this, but it can't remap to the big part? So she was like, and these were discussions, like this is like going back 10 years ago. I was having these discussions with her, like before I started my spiritual journey. So like there was things that were kind of coming into my life. Like, I don't believe things happen by chance. There were people popping up in my life, left and right, that were changing my views. They were taking me out of that meathead kind of, you know, persona that I was in. I was living the meathead avatar that I was in, trying to tell me that there was a lot more to it than just, you know, building your body, which took me a long time to latch onto.
So a couple of things. One of the books that most changed my way of thinking, and you might love this book, Jerry, it's called The Brain That Changes Itself. So empowering and beautiful. And that's what really put me on what I like to do is learn about neuroplasticity and growth factors in the brain, how you can change your brain and adapt it as an adult like a child could. And I had to do that personally because, like you, I had a history of addiction, and I also had a lot of traumas, I guess, as a child. But I don't like to use that word because I'm not one of those snowflakes. But the point is, like, you know, I had some stuff to deal with, and it really helped me tremendously. And that's how the brain, that's how it's thought that the brain can, you know, so much can be damaged, but it can reorganize itself. But at the end of the day, you don't know what the mind is. And that's why there's a theory of mind in psychology, which is not built into the neuroscience itself. But back to your spirituality, how do you think of religion? I know we'll talk about Masonry later, and Masonry is very spiritual, I mean,
Yes.
people don't realize that. People think that Masonry is a satanic cult. No, Masonry is actually very spiritual, and you have to believe in a higher power. It could be Jewish, it could be you could be Muslim, you could be Christian.
Anything but Satan.
Yeah, exactly. It's very specific.
The only one who can't believe it. Yeah.
And for people that don't know, the founding fathers of the U.S. were almost all Masons. Just so people know, it's built into our constitution almost, the thoughts of Masonry, really. But before we get to that, did you ever get attracted to religion?
So
organized religion.
So I grew up as Lutheran, and my parents made me go to Sunday school and stuff like that, but they never pushed it. You know, they were always like, make your own choices. So in the Lutheran religion, I made my first communion like when I was like, I was older. Like the kids usually make it when they're young. I was like older in our religion. Then my confirmation wouldn't be till like I was like a senior in high school. And that stuff happens way earlier in the other Christian religions. And I got to a point where I was listening to this and I was just kind of like, it's not making much sense to me. You know, the way they were, I think it was the presentation didn't make much sense. So I kind of walked away from it. And I won't say I was anti-religion, but I was definitely atheist for a good clip of my life. I just didn't care. I was so self-absorbed though. It was all about self. It wasn't about any other person or God or anything else. You know, it was all about ego and this ego construct that kept me alive. You know, without the construct that I had created, I wasn't me anymore. I didn't exist. Mm. And as I got a little bit older and I noticed that, let's say something great happens, you know, oh, thank you, God. Like we say it, like I would say it, you know, or I'll be like, you know, something really bad's happened. Like my mom has cancer right now. I'll be like, God, please don't take her now. Like it's almost just something you say that you're not even thinking about. And I wasn't necessarily talking to God, but I found myself during times of triumph and agony, both saying that. Mm-hmm. And then I started to think more about it. I said, well, what really, you know, let's delve into it. And I always have questions. You know, I figure that if I can question something and it doesn't fit, then it's not right. Mm-hmm. So I would question people that I knew about religion and certain things that didn't fit. And I came up with like what my own theories were. And I think it's the way that I presented that people kind of don't like. But I looked at, I do believe Jesus was a real person. I believe that he was the son of God. However, I believe he was the backup plan. I believe that God looked and said, you guys have screwed stuff up so bad that I have to send this person down there to get you guys back on track. So if we were all righteous and doing the right thing, he never would have been here. So he was like an ascended master that wound up getting sent back down so that we could go back on track. And that pushed everybody back into that Christian type of religion. Now, what I say, I don't go to church. I don't believe that you have to go to an organized church. I believe that everybody has a personal relationship with God, but what is God? You know, I don't believe it's the guy sitting up there on a cloud with a long white beard, you know, that looks like an older version of Jesus. I don't believe that. I believe it's some kind of energy source. It's some kind of source that, I mean, you know, my wife and I were just talking the other night. I said, you know, it's interesting how she works in the CVOR and when somebody's heart goes down, what do? They take the EEG pads and they bring them back. So they use electricity. Why do they use electricity? Get the heart started. Well, how does that work? There's an electrical impulse in the heart. I said, how do we get electricity in our bodies? Where does electricity come from? Because we're nothing at point of conception. And all of a sudden, the egg and the sperm come together and makes this little amoeba-looking thing. There's already electricity in there. So a human passes electricity on to another human. Now it's a whole nother discussion about, you know what I mean? Where did the original electricity come from? How did it go from being whatever it is in its natural form to a being? Right? So it had to somehow take place.
Have you ever read of Spinoza, the Jewish, formerly, I mean, he's a Sephardic Jew, but he he wrote a few treatises, I don't know how to say that word, but he wrote a couple of books about his view of religion. And in fact, most of the scientists of the 20th century that were very famous, like Einstein, subscribed to Spinoza's God, which is the God of the universe. So the God of that electricity, the God of geometry, the God, all of these laws in the universe are actually the fabric of God. To me. I mean, that's how I look at it. A lot of people always ask me, what's my religious view? And I have a very strong religious view, but I don't subscribe to a particular religion, but I worship God every day. And I think that you were talking earlier about self and being, if I feel one of the tenets of my belief structure is that if one serves only oneself, there is only misery. It doesn't matter if there's a hell or a heaven. Even in this life, there's only misery. Even those Kardashians, they're not happy. I know they're not happy. Look at all those celebrities getting divorced every 3 years. They can't keep a marriage together. They're rich. They post these things on Instagram like they're having a good life. They're not. They're miserable inside and empty. unless you serve something else,
Absolutely.
something greater.
What's the thing is, I think that, to think that there's nothing else, and it's funny because science and religion don't usually jive, but you can back a scientist into a corner where he has no explanation. They just get pissed at you. So if you back the scientist in the corner, you say, okay, you don't believe in God, right? You don't believe in, no, I can't prove anything. Okay, well, you are the ones that came up with the theory that energy can't be destroyed. It just changes form. So where does it go? Mm-hmm. If the body dies, where does that energy go? Is it conducted into the universe? Where? And they don't know. That's the problem. Is they don't know about a soul. They don't know about, they think they understand how the body works, but I'm 99% sure that whatever they give us, there's a billion other things that we don't know because we haven't cured cancer yet. We haven't cured AIDS.
No.
So despite them thinking that, we have the answers because of science. Well, some scientists are very cocky. Other ones are very open to, hey, we're doing science so we can find the next chunk that proves this wrong so we can keep learning.
Yeah.
So when you back them into a corner like that and say, okay, if there's no soul and there's, in electricity, you can't destroy energy, where does it go? And they have no answer for it. I said, well, you guys are the ones that came up with the theory. So what's the finishing part of your theory? But religion would say that energy goes back to its source. I like to use those words because it's very less religious and more spiritual. Mm-hmm. Source energy. So you go back to the source. Now, what does that mean? Doesn't mean you go see the guy in the cloud. I don't really understand what it is because we've never been there yet. Anybody that goes there doesn't come back. So, it's interesting how, science doesn't want to always admit that something like that could be real. But then again, people that are religious believe in science. They believe that the scientists are real. They believe what they say. They believe that their theories and stuff are right. So it's like, it seems like science wants to be, the only one with the answers. And if it doesn't fit their answers, it's almost like science and then religion is bro science. Like you don't have the proof, though, something's going on and you can't prove it other than how you feel. Yeah. And they go, well, that doesn't count, and I'm like, well, I get it. It's two different sides of the coin.
But these people on YouTube that are like really, first of all, I never argue with these atheist type people because there's no point. They're missing something. Yeah. They have to me, a lower level of understanding. I was there before. I was an atheist. Yeah. I had to rebuild because I realized that the idea to say there is nothing there has some implications. Number one, first of all, you don't know nothing's there. So that's ridiculous to say that, okay? Second of all, the implications are a lack of gratitude, for example. It just comes with militant atheism. There's a lack of gratitude in your spirit because you're not grateful.
You don't care about anyone else. You don't care. Yeah. Empathy, I think, comes with spirituality. And when you're empathetic, you can feel what other people feel. And it makes you make decisions based on not harming other people based on how you feel. When you're an atheist, you don't give a shit about other people. So you just do whatever you want and whatever they feel. Who cares? I don't care. As long as I feel all right, screw them. Yeah. It's kind of a conditioning,
So there's, and another thing you mentioned, which is spirituality is the core of the real religions. The core is not dogma. It's not ritual. Like, for example, Judaism has become mostly a ritual-based religion, whereas Christianity and among the ascetics, like the monks and those people, you'll find people who are truly spiritual. And those people have interesting things, like when they meditate, their brain waves function differently. They go to very high levels. They have, certain qualities of themselves. Look at that famous example of the Buddhist monk who burnt himself while staying in the position. This is an incredible feat that can only come from some kind of mastery. They do
something. You've seen them get kicked in the face over and over again, get them kicked in the groin over and over again. They don't move.
Yeah.
Break sticks over their heads and stuff.
But have you seen the guy who burnt alive?
I'm gonna send it. Did he die or?
He burnt alive. Yeah, he lit himself on fire as a protest, and he stayed in the meditative position the whole time as he burned. Didn't move. He burnt up, and it was unbelievable. And in fact, there's a history also of this. There's a lot of Buddhist monks who used to, they used to stop eating and stay in a meditative position. And before they did that, they would eat some foods that would, or some molecules that would preserve their body. So there are these bunch of Buddhist monks who, I forgot what they're called, unfortunately, but someone listening can comment, that died in that position, in the meditative position. There's hundreds of them around the world, and they just died of hunger staying like that. This is an incredible mastery of your spirit.
Yeah.
But you mentioned so many other things. I keep looking down because I'm taking notes on what you're saying. So one of the things you mentioned is like how people, maybe they don't respond well to your spirituality. Now, some of the things that I've been following you for 8 years. 8 years, yeah. So I've been, I love story time. you've been like my friend without you knowing it. And sometimes when I get consultations from people, they tell me, I feel like I already know you. This is the case with you. You don't know me, but I feel like I know you.
Yeah, and you guys do, because I've never given anything but myself. I've never tried to be anything I'm not. Or so I meet people and they're like, they'll say. So for instance, this is funny you say that. So back home, like my best friend growing up, he was at this party, and he overheard like the kid, like the guy's kid who was like 18 or whatever. He's like, oh, yeah, this guy is so cool and blah 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 blah. And you overheard him say Jerry Ward, and he was like, what? He was like, what about Jerry? And the guy's like, oh, he's this cool guy on YouTube. And he's like, I grew up with him. He's like one of my best friends. And he started going on. He goes, yeah, you got this new dog. His name is Brady. He's a French bulldog. Like, he knew everything about me. And Henry was like, what the hell? He was like, wow. Like, so when he called me, he said, dude, this guy knows like everything about you. And he goes, and it's like legit about you. It's not like this weird stuff. He's like, he knows things about you that I know are true. I was like, yeah, it's because I just throw it out there. So if you meet me, you already know me.
There's just so much I wrote down. But so one thing is that, so one thing the audience should know about Jerry intentionally, like as Jerry not transformed, but grew, evolved. That's the thing,
Yeah.
You evolved and I know you knew that your YouTube views will go down if you don't stay on fitness. And you intentionally just you put yourself out there. You still talk about fitness because it's your career, right?
Did you watch the video? I didn't put it up yet, did I?
No, which video?
Oh, so I have a video going up that's entitled "Why I Killed My Channel."
Yeah, you did.
Put it up yet. Yeah, that's funny to say. I already filmed it. Yeah,
I know you did it intentionally, and that shows the kind of what your priorities are. Not commercialization, not making money off YouTube. Probably you're making more than $5,000 a month before, or maybe.
Oh yeah, we've been well before. Yeah.
Yeah, and you intentionally transformed because you want to talk about what motivates you, and that shows real passion. And I think, some people that are saying, oh, like Jerry just flipped or something like that. No, he evolved. If a human doesn't evolve, I mean, what are you doing in your life if you're not growing? You know what I mean?
Well, some people evolve, like, there are the guys that started when I was doing it too. They're evolving like business wise. You know what I mean? Like they're creating businesses, and you can see their evolution. Like every one of us, if you look where we started to now, we're totally different. We may look a little different, but our lifestyles, like, take Mark Lobliner, for instance, like he's really evolved. He may look similar, but he started these new businesses. He lives in a different state now. Like you see more of his kids and stuff. Like he's evolved into, like putting more of his family and stuff on there and being involved with the family and making products like the Outright bar as opposed to like Muscle Builders. So you can even see how each one of us evolves like that. Mine just happened to be, I'm looking for more. I know there's more than fitness. I know there's more than bodybuilding. There's more than going to movies. There's more. I can feel it. I can see it. And I think that, my grandmother, when she passed away, I was in the room and she was totally cool with dying. She was very religious. She was like, let's go, let's get it on. I'm ready for the next step. And that's what really made me, and that was a long time ago, but it gave me this kind of view that if she was so sure on her deathbed that she's going to a better place, there's got to be something to it. My mom is the same way. So I have people around me that, are really supportive of there are other things beside. Now, don't get me wrong. Do bodybuilding. You love it. Do the best you can at it. You're passionate about it. Do it until you no longer love it. But be aware that there's more. And the thing is, the older that I got, my body started breaking down from the bodybuilding. So I realized like the body, it doesn't last as long as we want it to. But there's got to be something else to life other than just bodybuilding. Now, I love it. I want to keep doing it. But I want to kind of find that part of myself that I can vibrate at a higher level. I want to be ascending to the point where I have empathy. I have different ways of seeing things. Like I can put myself in the other person's shoes now every single time. And part of that journey, and this is way oversharing, but pretty much I'd say I wouldn't say all, but I'd say most of my ex-girlfriends I've cheated on. A lot of them. And
you cheated on, or they cheated on you?
Yeah, I cheated on them. I mean, a lot of them. And then all of a sudden I got cheated on for the first time and realized this is awful. Like this is what they felt like. Then I could put myself in their shoes. After that point, I no longer cheated because I understood what it felt like. And I understood that what I was doing was wrong. So for me, it's all about trying to understand what the other person actually feels by trying to think about, if I was in that position, I know what this feels like. And if I've never experienced that and it's 10 times worse than that, good Lord, they're in a bad spot. So I think that a lot of the spirituality for me is trying to connect with other people and understand them, like where they're at.
We saw you suffer. I mean, it was visible on your face during those times, and I'm sorry for what you went through. I saw that also. You know, now that's a good point you bring up about the body. I mean, I always tell people who are athletes, like, the problem with that is that by the time you're 40, it's only downhill, and you can only you're gonna get depressed.
Thanks, Leo. Huh? I said, thanks, Leo.
Yeah, no. I mean, what I mean to say is, like, you know, you'll never be what you were, and it just causes depression. So many athletes are depressed by the time they're 40 or 50. But if you focus on your spirit or your mind, you can continue to grow throughout your life. And you can, but there's a couple other things you mentioned, like you mentioned Jesus. It's a really interesting thing. There's a book by a character who I actually really dislike, but his book is excellent. His name is Riza Aslan, and the book is called Zealot, Jesus of Nazareth. And it's a historical study of Jesus, and very insightful, short book, a beautiful book. And it's quite interesting to learn about how many, by the way, if you are out of time, just let me know whenever you're out of time so we can. Yeah. So what's interesting about it is that there were so many other Jewish revivers of the religion at the time that Jesus was living. In fact, the most famous one is John the Baptist, who was a real person, and Jesus met him. And we know he met him at some point from the historical accounts. And what many people don't know is there's a whole religion that was based off John the Baptist. Most of them live in Iran right now. It's called Mandeanism. And these people, they live by the river, and they follow the John the Baptist religion. It's very fascinating. I once wrote a long article about them. Well, I should probably post it on my blog sometime. But so that's one interesting thing. And if the audience wants to check out that book, it's really fascinating. Also, another thing is, like, sometimes, you know, people tell me, well, you don't know God exists. God is not that man with the white beard and so on. As I say, God is the God of geometry and of the world and of this, you know, that is God. But I live sort of how God, like Jordan Peterson said, I live as if God exists. Because the thing is, there's no mistake that all of the societies in the world, we've never found a society in the world that does not believe in spirituality. There's no such thing. It's never been found. It's not a coincidence. It is humans have evolved to believe that way for some reason. And if you look at subjective well-being studies of happiness, religious people or spiritual people are happier. So it is more effective. Now, some people may tell you, well, I don't want to lie to myself. You don't have to lie to yourself. The laws of the universe are constant, and those are things that you should respect and be grateful for. And that you can call God, even if you don't believe in like a single being that is, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think different people, and they should because again, the way that I was raised, you were raised, they were raised, we interpret things differently. We see things through a different looking glass, everybody individually. Mm-hmm. Like my ex-girlfriend, she lived in Montana, and we went to the Spanish Peaks, and we were riding horses through the Spanish Peaks. Mm-hmm. And she looked at, she said, that's God to me. Meaning what we were looking at could have only been built by, you know, and a great architect like God. It was just such a stunning, beautiful, like perfect thing to look at. And that was what it was to her. She's like, I know because, you know, like no guy created this. It's impossible. It had to have been God. So I think that each person, you know, they have to find their own journey, but I think there's something that's deep inside them. I think people really know that there is more, but they're scared. You know, they're very scared, or they're conditioned to think there isn't, so that they feel like they're in control of things. So I do feel like, you know, sometimes we're not in control of our lives. You know, people come into your lives and leave. You're not in control of it. You know, they love you now, they hate you later. I mean, you can't control it. You could be just your best version of you, and eventually your vibration changes and they leave. So, you know, they're more apt to say, well, that person's a jerk, and not I'm on my journey and that was supposed to happen, because that's out of their control.
And, you know, that's where the gratitude comes in. We're not in control of anything. No. I could wake up tomorrow and just have a heart attack and die. And I'm pretty careful about my health, but it really may happen. We're not in control of anything. And that's where the gratitude is sometimes like a medicine for the soul. But another question, you brought up ego. And, you know, this is an interesting subject, which we talk about on our channel a little bit in terms of psychedelics. So sometimes people tell me, like, is meditation the best way to break the ego? Because one of the things that influenced me the most is a book by Aldous Huxley called The Perennial Philosophy, which is about perennial religions, what they have in common. And one of the things that all the spiritual ascetics and monks have is they develop universalism. They feel at one with the universe and at one with each other. And the border between me and you breaks down, where I realize I don't even really exist on my own. I am part of everything else. Right. So you feel the pain of others, like you were saying, the empathy and so on. And to be honest, personally, I found that psychedelics are actually the quickest way to break your ego. It's not meditation, not the abuse of them, but What do you think about that? Because I know you've been experimenting with that.
I do, and the psychedelics actually taught me. So like what I do is like I take the psychedelics and they go, well, why? Why did they work? How did this work? Because I'm the why guy. How? Why? My whole life, why? And I found that personally, what I personally think, and it's just my view, is I think the best way to I don't want to say obliterate your ego, because we need the ego. It's there to protect us.
Exactly.
It's not supposed to be who we are. So you need to be aware of it. Now, once you're aware of it, it's just like going through a psychiatrist or something when you're trying to work out problems. Once you're aware of the problem, you can work on it. So now you have to be aware that and accept the fact that you have an ego, because it's a negative connotation with it. People are like, I don't have no ego. Like, no, you do, because that's born in every one of us. But once you're aware of it, now you can actually change that. So if, there are times where I'm saying, man, am I really not liking this? It's just my ego getting out of control. Like, you question whether or not you really like or not like something, or you're saying something based on how you truly think and feel, or is your ego talking? So there's three selves. There's the basic self, the conscious self, and the higher self. And the basic self is the child that throws tantrums, it wants what it wants. That would be the ego. Then there's your conscious self, where you start making decisions based you're more like a teenager, and you're absorbing things, but you're conscious of what's going on around you, but you still make wrong decisions, but you're still conscious, and you kind of keep that middle ground, kind of keeps the basic self in check. Then there's the higher self that's more connected to God and energy source, that you only understand and know through love and empathy and things like that. And every one of us has those in us. And we start out with the basic self, and our goal is to try to achieve that higher self where we connect back with our higher selves again. Now, the problem is the ego is connected to the basic self. And that basic self, it wants what it wants. It wants it now. I want that car. I want it now. I don't want to work for it. I want the Lambo in the yard. But you got to work 20 years. Nope, I want it now. And it throws a fit. And if it doesn't get what it wants, it fights and fights and fights. And that's the ego. Once you're aware that that thing exists inside your body, that thing, whatever you want to call it, exists inside of you, that's when you're ready to step up to now the conscious self, which is the next part, right? So now you're actually conscious and aware of these different parts of you. You're not just Jerry. There are multiple parts that make up Jerry that we're not even aware of. They're there, and we are aware of them, but we don't understand that when we're born, that they're there. Like, if we're not, facilitating to learning about these things where people tell us, they just kind of fall by the wayside, and then we're indoctrinated by regular society into just being ourselves and consuming more and just being, working through the ego and living through the ego. That's just, everything is through ego. So it was really like, identifying what the ego was, that I had one first, and accepting it and admitting it, almost like a drug addict. Like, you admit it and accept it. And then you can start to change after that. But if you fight it and you're in denial about having an ego, you can't change it. You're doomed to continue that cycle until you figure it out.
It's really interesting, because personally, I experimented with psychedelics so much. Actually, I've never really talked about this on the channel, but I did it so much that I actually, at one point, totally lost my ego. And this became a problem for me, because I was not standing up for myself. I would just, people could just, use me, or I was always thinking of others. And it was too much. That's why I think you have to have a sense of self, but you also have to have that principle of universalism to realize consciously that really yourself is not yourself. But you also have to stand up for yourself. Like, for example, this morning it happened, or yesterday. This is a funny example. Like, so I have email consultations. And by the way, I overdo them. Like, normally people write a short email. I write like 2 pages to respond. It actually takes me too much time. I only charge $90. I usually spend an hour and a half writing the email, to be honest with you. So it's cheaper than my phone consultations and more informative. But I always do these. So the thing is, though, I get so many emails now, and I'm sure you have the same situation, where you can't necessarily read out and respond to every email with the Instagram messages, with everything else. So sometimes, like, I'll tell somebody, hey, reply to me. I'd like to see what happens. And apparently this gentleman, he texted me on Instagram. He says, why are you not responding to my email? And I said, which email? He said, I ordered a consultation. You didn't respond. So I got shocked. So I called my admin. I said, immediately refund this guy. I don't know what he's paid for that I haven't responded to. Then the admin told me, no, you responded. You sent a long email. He just responded again. Do you want to respond to it? I said, I have too many emails. I can't right now. So I texted the guy back. I said, I did send you an email. I just didn't respond. He said, well, you said you respond. I said, no, text me back. I'd like to see. But on my website, it says Leo, it's one email. Like, I can't just spend time going back and forth constantly. And that's me standing up for myself. Like, hey, then I decided not to refund the guy because I wrote a long email. You have to stand up for yourself at some point. Now he's going to probably go talk badly about me or whatever, but you have to stand up for yourself. Or it's the same way, for example, like when Fuad Abiad threatened Nick to release these nude pictures of him. I've been attacking Fuad for weeks. People say this is not very spiritual. Well, I think sometimes you have to you have to do right. And if you see someone doing wrong, you can't just rely on God to fix it. Sometimes you have to do your part. So like you have to call somebody out.
That's karma. Karma uses us as a tool, you know, and I also believe that God uses us as a tool. So I believe that we all have to do these lessons over and over again until we learn the lessons. And if you don't learn the lesson, you're doomed to repeat that lesson over and over again. So in order to learn the lesson, sometimes you are part of the lesson for the other person.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, for instance, you know, for my family, the lessons are like, it ends with me finally, but it started with my grandfather, my father's father. So my father's father had left when he was like 4, very young, and went off and remarried. And back then that was kind of like a rare thing. It was kind of odd. So my father was kind of distanced from his dad a little bit. Well, my father then moved to Rhode Island with my mother when he was older and had met her. So he moved away from Texas. And when my grandfather was on his deathbed, my father didn't get back there. They were kind of estranged. He wasn't close to him, and, you know, he just whatever. Now, it's very interesting how, you know, although they weren't close, I was thinking to my head, what did my grandfather feel when my father didn't go back? Was he hurt by that? Was that a lesson for him? Don't know, because he's already gone. Now, flash forward, just like my father moved away from Texas, I moved away from Rhode Island. I did the same exact thing. It's an exact blueprint, not even realizing it, what my dad did. Now, I didn't make it back for my dad when he died. Wow. So now I'm like, here's the lesson. My father, I'm sure he understood, but he was hurt that I couldn't be there. Did my father understand that my grandfather may have been hurt at the same time when he was going through it? So he had moved into my grandfather's shoes and I had moved into his. Now, I don't have kids, so the lesson stops there, but I know the lesson. I learned the lesson from those two. If someone is on their deathbed and they're close to me, I need to be there. You can't just blow it off. So the lesson went right through my family and stops with me. So there are people that don't learn those lessons. So like, let's say I had a kid and I didn't understand the lesson. The thing might have repeated itself again based on the patterns that are, there's a lot of patterns in the universe that just consistently keep going. And as genetics dictate, we think a lot of like our parents and stuff like that. So to me, the lessons are what we learn. If you don't learn those lessons, you repeat them over and over and over again until you die. I mean,
that's so true. In fact, I had the same thing happen in my family with literally my father and grandfather, but it was more extreme. Like my father, not to get too personal. And by the way, the reason I'm talking a lot with you is because you've been on the show before, so maybe you'll be a regular guest so we can chat back and forth and stuff like that. So basically, my grandfather, I grew up with my father complaining about my grandfather. So my grandfather had cut off my father from the family. We grew up really poor, actually because of me, because I was half American. My grandfather didn't approve of my birth, so he cut off my father. But apparently, my father always told me this as a kid, so I always blamed myself. But later, I learned that they had their own issues, and basically, my whole childhood, my father just complained about his father, just constantly, about what he did to him as a kid, or beat him up, or when he hit him with a stick, or whatever, stuff like that. Then I grew up, when I was 4 years old, my father was hitting me with a stick, exact same thing. It totally repeated itself. And then my father also stopped talking to me the exact same way for when I was young, when I was in my 20s, stopped talking to me for years, and then talked to me for a year or two, and then stopped talking to me. It's been 6 years now. I haven't heard from my father, even though every year I send him a message on his birthday, on the important holidays. I never get a response. The exact same thing happened. And
he's learning a lesson. Yeah. So you see the lesson, you understand it.
Yeah.
He is learning the lesson about what happened with his father. You know what I mean? He's learning that even though his father, because I'm sure your father's a good guy, but he may be learning that his father may have been a good guy, but he just didn't know how to act or present it or be what your father needed. And then a lot of people say, like, break the cycle. I don't look at it as a cycle. I look at it as the lessons that are not learned. If you don't learn the lesson, you're going to hand that piece of information down to your kid, and he's going to act like you. It's not a cycle. It's the fact that you're conditioning your kid to be like you. Now, you've learned the lesson. If you had a kid, you're not going to hit him with a stick. You're not going to do the things, and you're not going to lose touch with him, because you learned the lesson. Now, was it your lesson to learn? I believe that we all have our own lessons, but I believe that everybody around us helps us learn our lessons, and we're there to help them learn theirs. Like, we're still connected in that way. It's just that we don't understand the dynamic. Like, most people just kind of go through with blinders on, especially now. Everybody's walking down the street with their phone. They don't even pay attention to who's around them, let alone what lessons are coming up in life. And, I have people that I know that, like, all they're just negative. And I'm like, why do you think all this negative stuff is happening? You're creating this. you're creating this negativity around you being who you are because you're not learning your lessons. So you're forced to repeat those lessons that suck over and over and over again, rather than saying, this is like the fourth time I've been through something like this. What is going on? And looking inside there for what it could be that you're supposed to learn. They're just too busy like drinking beer or playing PlayStation or moving on to the next thing, distracted from why we're here. We're not here for PlayStation. We're not here to drink beers. We're here to learn lessons and have a human experience.
Yeah, very, very wise words. And, it scares me a little bit what you mentioned, because I'm planning to have a child soon. And I'm scared because I know that he didn't learn his lesson. And I know consciously that this has repeated itself. But I'm afraid of my subconscious. And I'm afraid, for example, one day I have a bad day at work and I come home and I'm short-tempered with my child or something like that. I'm so afraid of it that I'm thinking about it almost daily. And when I had Ben Pakulski on the show, it was really interesting. He was complaining about how his father also treated him when he was younger. But he has kids. And I asked him, do you ever like slip up? Does it ever? And he just said no, which I don't think is possible. I don't think it's possible that you could ever just not slip up. There would be a mistake. You have to go apologize. You have to go say, hey, I'm sorry. I raised my voice. I didn't mean it, And that's the thing my father never did. He never apologized. So it was just, you know what I mean? It's scary.
Yeah, so the perfect example is if you've ever watched my videos in the past, people have actually made drinking games because I say the word fuck so much. They'd be like, every time he says it, take a shot. And people are drunk within a minute, right? Well, this past weekend, it was the way that I presented myself. It's how I communicate, right? It's how I grew up. But this weekend, I did a seminar for the NPC. We had a wellness seminar. Yarishna came in, and I spoke for spoke off and on for an hour, 2 hours, whatever it was. Not a single swear. If I get around kids, not a single swear. I get around old people, not a single swear. It just goes away because I'm aware of how I talk, and there's something in your brain that flips the switch off. And the fact that you're so aware of what's going on that you will catch yourself before you do it, because it's not like, it's like reps. You're consistently using reps with your brain, thinking about it, going over and over again. If you stop thinking about it, it may slip up. But if it's in your mind, and it's not even in your subconscious, that's in the front of your mind still, that you understand that, that's what's going to make the difference. It's very hard to when you've learned that lesson, to turn it around and go back the other way. It's very hard. You almost have to do it on purpose. So you'd almost have to take how your dad acted and act on purpose like that. You know what I mean?
I hope so. But hey, this brings up an important point. I've always wanted to ask you this. Why don't you, I honestly think you would be an excellent father. And I think you should, why don't you adopt a child? I think you would be a great father. I love kids, and it never was for me. It never was. And I didn't understand, and I was super careful when I was younger. There was no scares and stuff like that. I never wanted the kid. Before, it was because of ego. I wanted to party. I wanted to chase girls. I wanted to do stuff like that. As I got older, it occurred to me, especially when I started to get in social media and people started to respond to me, that there are people who they have the kids and they instill all their I don't want to say memories, but their ideologies, and they teach them everything and they raise them. And I realized there are people that are like that who are independent and within this small little cell of their family, and there are people that are open to the masses, people that are called messengers. And for me, it was about going through all the miserable things. Like if I had a kid when I was younger, I went through so many things. Heroin, that kid would have been just so messed up. I went through so many things to make me relatable to the public that now I look at the entire public as my kids. I try to do the right for the entire public when I put something out. So I don't have that piece missing in me that says, oh, I don't have a kid. Now, I do see, those videos. They tear me up. Those soldiers coming back from overseas, and they don't know that they're coming back, and they go to the kid's school, and the kid sees them and they freak out. And I go, wow, imagine, something loves you that much, right? That they freak out when they see you because they missed you so much. And I go, that is what they need, but that's not what I need. I understand that's an awesome thing, but I don't require that. I don't look for it. I don't need it. And for a while, there were different reasons, I think, why I didn't want kids. Me and my wife, we thought about adopting. We thought of all that stuff like that. And then we look at her job right now is CVOR. She does open heart surgery. So every time she goes to work, she's saving people all day long, nonstop. So is it more important to have a kid and instill all your knowledge into a kid and let that go on?
Or is it more important to save the tens of thousands of people she's already saved, and by the time she's done there, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, that they are the ones giving their knowledge to their kids and maybe even doing great things? Like, we can talk about it now because he talked about it. She worked on Dick Cheney when he came in there and had a heart attack. Wow. So there are people that come through there that are very important people that influence and do well or do great things in the world. So that was kind of her thing of how she understood. And I was like, well, that makes sense. I mean, what was my thing then? And then I looked at it and it was like, you influence so many people around the world with what you say, and you don't want to be the meathead. That's just one part of you. You want people to understand the spirituality. Now, could you do that to a kid? The kid's one person, and they might catch on to that. They might fight it like hell. They might wind up leaving. Don't know. But the whole point was, if there was something missing in my life that I felt like I needed that's what I needed, I would have gone, yeah, I definitely want to have a kid. It was more of looking in and saying, what do I really need to fulfill me in my life? And do I want it just because that's what you're supposed to do? You know, so what I do is I have my nieces and nephews and I just do everything for them. And I have my dog and I do everything for him. And it's like I have all these kids, but they go home at the end of the day and it's quiet. And then I get to get on the computer and try to get to as many people as I possibly can and give them what I would normally give the kids. So I'm trying to give the entire world. Like, for me, my legacy is more important than, you know, any kind of meathead stuff or diets or whatever. I want, when I'm gone, I want, you know, 20 years from now, somebody to say something that I said, and it's been handed down like 4 times to them, and they don't even know where it came from. They'd be like, my grandfather told me this. Well, your great grandfather saw it on my video, handed it down to your grandfather, who handed it down to you. And it doesn't matter if they know it came from me. It's from me. It'll be the things that I put out. Something out there is going to last forever and be handed down. And I was like, that for me, that's what fulfills me.
Yeah, this one of the reasons I wanted to make videos, because it makes you eternal. It'll stay there forever. And you're right. You do. And I mean, I always say this on the Big Lenny podcast, that he helped a lot of people when they were down. I think you did the same thing for many, 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 many people. And that's why one of the reasons I want to have you on more often is because we have like a sort of a different kind of crowd following my channel, not all of them in bodybuilding, stuff like that. And I'd like to introduce you to them, because there's a lot of, even the old videos, they should go watch the old story time videos. There's so many lessons, so entertaining. You feel like you're with Jerry in the room. It's incredible. But before we end, I just want to, because we went a lot on spirituality. If you still have a few minutes, I just want to go back to this fake natty TRT thing, because basically what's happened in the last 4 years is a new wave of people have come on YouTube who are basically saying they're on TRT. The most famous example, obviously, is Greg Doucette, but they're on TRT, but they look like they were on stage, or their skin is paper thin. And like, for example, I think I sent you the message where Greg Doucette recently responded to someone, no GH, no AI, 140 milligrams testosterone. Well, why is your skin so thin? I just don't get it. I've never seen that on any human being, anyone, African-American, nobody, you know?
I mean, I'll answer right now. I don't care what Greg has to say about it. I really just don't give a shit, because he's lying.
Yeah, he's lying.
He's absolutely lying. I don't give a shit, Greg. If you see this, you're fucking lying. Because if you didn't need to take all those drugs, why did you take them to compete? Exactly. You could have just taken 140 milligrams of test and been fine. Why does Ronnie Coleman look different? Why does Flex Wheeler look different? Why does Dorian Yates look different? Okay, those guys have better genetics than Greg. Okay, and those guys can't maintain the muscle mass at all. Even they tried, they couldn't. They stayed on drugs for a little while. As they started to pull the drugs, they started to shrink up. Everyone. So I'm fed up with this shit, because now TRT is like a minimum 600 milligrams of testosterone. Some people have DECA in there. Some people have AIs in there. Some people have, HCG. Some people have Xandrolone, because the lower version. Now, I can put it like this, like, Matt Porter had gone on like TRT when he got sick, and his body started to show it, right? And then as he started to show those, he would add a little more in, and then he got eventually to the point where he could compete again, but he couldn't compete on that original really low dose. He had to keep adding. And listen, Matt was on point with diet. He trained hard. Like, he left no stone unturned. Now, unfortunately, it didn't work out well for him. He passed away, but, he was a good example of the guys that he was tracking it, and he was doing blood work, and he was showing like everybody what he was taking, and he still had to go up on top of it. So if it was possible, then he could have literally just taken like this little TRT maintenance dose, been able to have a physique that he could do, still compete with and still win. And he wouldn't have had to add those other things back in. So I look at people like him, and Rich Piana also. Like Rich, when he started to lower the dosage, his body started to come down. He wasn't 300 pounds, and he'd go right back up again because he had, bigorexia. And we've talked about that before. Dallas McCarver, he was taking his testosterone was 50,000 when they tested it. That's a lot of testosterone. If you could only use 1 cc, why would he be pumping all that stuff through his body when he could take 1 cc, right? And I think very few people are honest with it because they want everybody to believe that, well, I'm not taking that stuff anymore, so you can listen to me now. You can trust me now. I'm not a scumbag. I'm not a cheater. I'm not this. Yes. And people start to buy into it. But like, there's no way you're walking around at 250 pounds, benching 400 pounds on 1 cc a test. Not when you started out at 135 pounds.
No, and the thing is, the reason they do it is there's, I think, 2 reasons. One reason is when you lower your dose and you shrink, you're still at a gram of test or whatever, but you shrunk, you want to make an excuse. So you say, I'm on TRT, which in reality is a gram or 500 milligrams or whatever, like that. The second reason is sometimes to sell stuff. Like in Greg's case, it's to sell most of the people who follow him,
whatever.
Yeah, his cookbooks or whatever. He wants to sell it. And if he's telling you, hey, I'm on actually growth hormone, I'm on an AI, I'm on 400 milligrams, I'm also taking Primo, then you say, well, oh, it's not your cookbook that's doing this to you. So it's actually a commercial reason. And Greg is funny in the sense that he's almost made it a caricature where he will constantly mention the HRT. He says, I'm doing this because of HRT. I'm doing this because he tries to, you know, how a liar sometimes will bring it out in front so you can't, you know, it's very interesting and it's quite common. Now,
projection.
Projection. Yeah, exactly.
So I did this commercial for CarMax, and it's the only national commercial I've ever done. And there were 4 of us that were around the same size. It was myself, Rob Eulis, Brad Rowe. There was one other guy there he was pretty big too. And it was me, Brad Rowe, and Rob Eulis. There was a little skinny guy. So we were supposed to be like the wheels of this truck, and the little skinny guy was a spare tire. There was another guy that we didn't know that was about our size. And the first thing he says when we meet him, he's like, oh yeah, I'm Josh, or whatever his name is. He goes, yeah, I'm natural. Like the first thing he says when he meets us, and we're all like, we looked at each other, and none of us knew each other from a hole in the wall. So he goes to the bathroom, and they're like, can you believe this guy? Like, he must have said in 20 minutes 5-6 times about how natural he is. Like, why are you telling us? Like, look at us. Like, you think we care if you are or aren't? Yeah. But you could tell that we weren't. So we're like 250 pounds. So if you're 250 with us and you're natural, that's pretty awesome. But like, why would you keep saying that? Like, we're not talking about drugs. You don't know what we're taking. And it was over and over again. He was projecting about how natural he was, and we just kept laughing at him. Because we're like, we're not stupid. You know what I mean? There's no way that you're standing here next to us and you're completely natural. And if you were, you wouldn't be saying it 10 times a day, every hour. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, the problem with this thing that Greg and others are doing is that they're actually, you guys, you and Boston even, and other people like that. Well, Boston went a little far with it, but you guys and Rich brought out the truth on YouTube. And then now there's like people trying to, they're actually uneducating the public again, backwards. But another thing,
like what happened was when we came out telling the truth, the public was like, man, those guys are cool for telling the truth. It just made us cool, period. Now what they're trying to do is be like, well, they're cool for telling the truth, but we're cooler than them because we don't need drugs.
Yeah, we don't.
So we're better than them. They needed it, we don't.
Yeah.
And it's just a lie. And I think what's going to happen is eventually people are going to catch on. Like what's going to happen is one of those people, they're going to make a stupid move, buy something online, they're going to get busted. Or they're going to sell something at the gym, they're going to get busted. Or somebody's going to rat them out, or they're going to get busted. Or they're going to get an infection and wind up in the hospital from injecting themselves and, come up with I had food poisoning or whatever, and their arms in a sling, the bandages or whatever. Like, I think that eventually something's going to happen that makes people question it. It always does. Like, the truth always comes out.
There's 2 last things I want to talk to you about very briefly. So there's one funny thing going on with Blaha. I don't know if you know about this, but it's hilarious. So I don't know if you remember, Blaha on his channel used to always say, you know how in fitness people want to watch you eat? So you used to do like a full day of eating. So Blaha always used to say, I'm not going to eat on camera because it's a gay fetish, which how he even knows that, I don't know. I was just talking to a client about this on the phone, actually, which is, there are these things. Me and my wife sometimes watch 600 Pound Life. Sometimes you see like a really fat lady, like 700 pounds, usually with an African-American boyfriend, because African-Americans tend to like bigger girls. So something, not always, it's something a white guy, whatever. But the point is, there's a guy, and they're called feeders. They like to feed women. I've actually come across one of them years ago on Tinder, right? But apparently, I had to research this. In the gay community, there's a much smaller segment that do like this kind of feeding thing and stuff like that. So how Blaha knew about this is questionable, and we all know probably how he knew about it. But the important thing is he always used to say, I'm not doing this. This is gay. So now Blaha, in the last 3 weeks, I was shocked. So I still subscribe. So I see the thumbnails, and I was shocked to see like a fat guy in a room, dark room, very dark, eating a bowl. And I was like, what is this? So I clicked. Blaha is now eating on camera with the same food every day. He's fat. And I don't know how he made the shadows where you can barely see his face. You got to open this, Jerry. You'll die laughing. It's really funny. It's hilarious because
first of all, Blaha's an idiot because making nothing, you can't say something is gay. Like I have gay friends and you would look at them and not ever know that they were gay.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't look at guys, that are muscular and stuff. And they're just people that happen to love somebody of the same sex. It's not, so when people start pointing, well, that's gay. Well, tell me what gay is. So I can walk up right now to a store and look at that guy and he's gay as hell, right? He's got a husband, he's married, and you don't know he's gay. There's nothing about him that says he's gay. It's like, I hate when people do stuff like that. It's almost like they're stereotyping, like anything that they perceive, like, whether it's gay, it's this, I'm like, whatever. It's
why he did that is because his food was probably peanut butter sandwiches and he didn't want to show on camera what he's really eating. But anyway, this is one funny thing. The last thing I want to ask you about, one incredible thing you did in the last few years is you regrew your hair. And you've made a video about it with Minoxidil and I think finasteride and stuff like that. But this is a very impressive feat because I know you had hair, but you're not like Blaha. Blaha is not bald, by the way. Everyone, as he tells everyone, but
he's bald to me. I don't know.
He's fully bald. But you had hair, but you actually regrew a lot of hair, which is really quite successful. Were you using a high percentage Minoxidil, like 10%?
I think it's like the regular one you get on Amazon for like $15.
Oh, you should check out minoxbeard.com. They have a 10%. So I have a Korean friend, best friend, who was on Minoxidil 5%. He was on 2, then he went to 5, and he stayed on 5 for 2 years. And he had like a lot of thinning in his hair still with the Minoxidil, not using finasteride. And I told him, hey, try this out. Go use the 10% and see what happens. Even though he was on the 5% for 2 years, it still regrew more hair.
Oh, wow.
It was a massive difference.
No kidding. I know they had there's Minoxidil, there's Minoxidil or something like that. There's another one that they say it works better, but it comes with side effects. I've had, luckily, knock on wood, 0 side effects whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so that's like another big thing. Like, the finasteride, people are you going to have side effects? I have no side effects. Like, like,
actually, a lot of my clients come with what's called post-finasteride syndrome. And I figured out how finasteride affects people mentally, and there's some ways to work around it. But the interesting thing is this. So there's another way you can do it. So have you ever heard of the channel More Plates, More Dates?
Yeah.
Derek's my friend, the guy who runs the channel, and he's like obsessed with hair. So that's the main thing he focuses on. Yeah, he really loves the subject, and he researches it a lot. So he has actually like an HRT clinic that they compound. It's quite expensive though. He even told me it's really expensive, but they compound Minoxidil. Like they'll do 10% Minoxidil with like 1% of a glucocorticoid that lowers inflammation, because inflammation even in the hair affects the hair growth. And then they also use this glaucoma medication. I don't know if you ever heard of these glaucoma medications. Women used to use them to grow their eyelashes. Yeah.
My wife uses it like for her eyelashes. We buy it in Mexico, right?
Yeah.
And when we were down there, I jokingly asked the lady at the pharmacy, so if I take this thing and I rub it on my head, I said, will the hair grow back? She said, yeah, but you got to keep using it. You can't stop. And they come in these little bottles, right? That I would use like a bottle, 2 bottles a day. You know what I mean? It was like $50 for the bottle or something like that. But my wife actually wanted to see if, like, her eyebrows, if she could thicken them instead of like using like makeup.
Yeah.
And actually put the stuff on her eyebrows, and her eyebrows grew thicker with it.
It's incredible. So what they're doing now, the top of the line science is mixing like high percent Minoxidil with the glaucoma medication with a little bit of retin A, like 1% retin A. It actually makes the Minoxidil more effective. And then they use like 1% or point something percent of a glucocorticoid, like anti-inflammatory. But anyway, I think this is a good place. I know you have a busy schedule. We have many more things to talk about. We didn't even get into Masonry. We have Rami's legs to talk about. We have so many things to talk about. So
I'm heading to the lodge right now. We have a meeting tonight. It's our stated meeting tonight.
Oh, great. Well, I really want to talk about that next time. But Jerry, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to the audience for listening.